Hello and welcome to the Take Charge podcast. I've just finished the recording with Morrow Batteries, and to pose a question first of all, should a leave of absence negatively affect your career progression? I guess the most obvious example of a leave of absence would be parental leave, so maternity or paternity leave, but there are of course many other examples which we talk about in today's episode. Let's say you're going for a job interview. Should the question of are you going to have children come up in the job interview? Of course, the answer to that is no, but I will talk through an example of when that's happened in the past. And let's say you're going for a promotion in your current business. Does the plan of having children affect your ability to gain that promotion? And do you avoid telling your manager in the first place? So I'm joined by two guests today. The first is Adriana Navarro-Suarez. She's the Research and Development Manager at Morrow Batteries, and she's conducting an amazing piece of research on this topic. And to help with that piece of research, she has a survey open, which is available until mid-June 2024. And I will, of course, share the details of how to complete that. We also talk about her part one of the piece of research, which is an article. It's already completed. And the title is A League of Our Own, a perspective on how to start and keep the flow of women in energy storage. Adri's colleague, Naja Boone, also joins us, and she is the Director of Marketing and Communications at Morrow Batteries. And we talk about all things diversity, equity, and inclusion in the energy storage field, sharing stories and ideas on how we continue making improvements in the industry. I was super impressed by the work that Naja, Adri and Morrow Batteries are doing. They've been able to achieve a pretty even split of 40% female employees in the business, which is super impressive compared to the industry average of between 10 and 20%. But what I was most impressed by was the culture of belonging and inclusion they've been able to achieve, which of course is the most important thing when it comes to creating a successful and innovative business. So without further ado, let's get into it as we take charge of DEI and leave of absence issues in today's world. Let's start with your backgrounds. Naja, I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so I am head of communications and marketing at Morrow Batteries, based in Oslo, but obviously the factory is being built down in Arendal. I'm an American Norwegian, worked in the US, back in Norway now, and I've been doing mostly B2B industrial marketing and communications throughout my career.
Thank you.
I'm Adriana. I'm one of the R&D managers and leading the electrolyte and separator team since 2021, end of the year. I'm originally from Colombia, have a background in chemistry, but moved to Europe to work in batteries. So I've been working in batteries since my master and then PhD almost 13 years ago. And thank you so much for inviting us.
No, thank you for coming on. When you agreed to come on the show, it was on the back of one of your own kind of podcasts or webinars that you did on the great work you're doing around DEI and women in batteries. So you kind of inspired that contact really. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Before we get into the kind of bulk of the topic, let's kind of learn a bit more about Morrow. So your mission at Morrow, your kind of technology overview, and your differentiator.
Yeah, I can reply to that. So we are aiming to develop the most cost-effective and sustainable batteries in the world. And we are working, starting with LFP, which is a commercial battery now. But then what it's going to make us different is actually our LNMO technology. And our LNMO technology is a more sustainable solution. We use manganese instead of cobalt, which is usually what you use as a scaffold for lithium and nickel. And we are also reducing the amount of nickel that we have in our LNMO. So that's why we are developing a more sustainable battery. And but also that means that we make it more effective because manganese is cheaper than cobalt. And we are working on those in LNMO chemistry at the moment. We have two chemistries based on it, LNMO X and LNMO graphite. And LNMO X, it's targeting longer cycles, LNMO graphite is targeting electric vehicles. And we are looking forward to commercialize these batteries.
Brilliant. And is it just Norway that you're present right now, or do you have other facilities elsewhere?
We have labs in Oslo and in south of Norway, in Grimstad. We have our battery research center, our Morrow Research Center. We are around 50 researchers working from this lab. And until quite recently, we had our customer qualification line in Korea, but we packed it up last month, and it's at the moment moving to Norway, and it's going to be in Arendal by the summer, sometime the end of this year.
Very good.
And then we also have a team in Germany.
Oh, nice. Very good.
Yep.
I've been impressed by your LFP technologies and your USP in that regard. As you scale, it's going to be super important to bring on board the right team and ultimately create the right environment for this team to thrive, ultimately in an inclusive one, and expand your pool where you can take from. So let's get into diversity, equity, and inclusion. I guess to start off with, Adri, how would you define DEI in a simple way?
So DEI, for just to make it clear to everyone, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And diversity is how your workforce is represented. And it can be gender diversity, but also sexual orientation, age, ethnic background, way of thinking, different abilities. There are many different aspects that include that diversity. And equity refers how you treat your people, the fair treatment of people. A lot of people talk about this equality, but I think it's quite different. Well, a little bit different. Equality assumes that everyone gets the same treatment, while equity takes into consideration each person's circumstances. And but the idea is that the end result is equal for different people. And then in terms of inclusion, it's how we embrace each employee and enable them to make meaningful contributions to a company or to a university.
Very good.
That was great. That was great, Adriana. I would not be able to. You know a lot about this. Thanks for sharing that. That was useful for me too.
Thank you, Naja.
You made a good point on the equity piece as well, because I think there's sometimes some confusion around equality and equity, and there's plenty of interesting visuals that help illustrate what that actually means. I think one of the best ones is that there is a fence and there's people trying to watch I think it's a baseball game or something, but there's someone who's quite tall, someone kind of average height, and someone quite short, and there are different blocks to help the shorter people see over in that, and then they can all see the game together. And with equity, it's about employers helping provide a fair advantage and a fair playing field for somebody to perform well in work. So if it's somebody with a disability, they can work in the lab and perform their work just as well as somebody who doesn't have that disability. So nice touch there, Adri. It's as well, I think DEI, especially in startups, is something that can be overlooked because there's so much to be done. Driving revenue, maybe looking at the kind of patents and R&D, and maybe it's kind of an afterthought in their recruitment and their culture deck. But I think it's important to get this right to begin with to enable scaling and sustainable scaling. So what would you say is the most important thing that companies need to get right to become a high-performing and diverse team going forwards?
Well, can I just want to comment on what you said with getting it right from the start as a startup. And I think one of the things that I love about Morrow is the fact that we were founded by 3 very different people. So I feel like we've had this kind of crazy mix as part of our DNA since we started. We were not founded by 4 dudes in some kind of engineering basement, hanging out all the time. They were just so different. So that's kind of it's really been a part of who we are from day one. And I think that's something that it just sits in the wall very early on. And then I also have to commend, our HR team, who's been very focused on this from day one as well. Like, what type of people do we get in, and wanting to invite, very systematically and very focused, inviting different type of talents into the pool and into the interviews. I think I came in 1.5 years ago, and I was just looking at this, and obviously we're still very much, even if we're a scale up, we're 180 people, 31 nationalities, and we're growing really quickly. We're still very, low on resources, and we need to be very careful with our spending. So, I'm still overlooking both internal communications, marketing, and so forth. And I was just trying to get in and like support the leadership group in terms of how do we define ourselves? What's our DNA, what's our values, etc. And I just came up with this, different is good as a concept in terms of how do we try to talk about ourselves. But we haven't had the time to do a lot of workshops about values and culture and DI and everything. So, but we really, I that really resonated with a lot of people internally from the start. And HR has also been using this very actively when they talk about who we are. So different is good, but it's also difficult. And I think that's something that we need to address, the fact that we are 31 cultures and we don't have this, a big HR team, a big comms team who can facilitate the conversation and make it all like very textbook perfect. I think if you want to succeed with working with diverse, innovative teams, I think we have a benefit in startups that, I would just encourage more established companies as well to really try to embrace is the fact that we fundamentally, truly, honestly need every person that walks into the door, in our door. And I think that creates that kind of level playing field. It creates that type of respect, and it creates that type of listening that you kind of need to make people feel like they can belong without fitting in. And Norway is a very homogeneous country, culture. I mean, I was born up in Scandinavia, so I know this culture very well. It's not for everyone. It's very, it's a very boxy kind of culture. We're all very same. So breaking into Norwegian society can be tricky. And especially if you break into we think that our schools are the best and our ways of doing things are the best. And then actually listening to other people, other cultures, other ways of doing things and coming from other educational institutions can be tricky for us. But because Battery is so new to Norwegians, we actually need to listen to experts from around the world, Adriana, and all kinds of other talented people. And that creates a shift in the power dynamic that is really beneficial in terms of creating a safe space at work where people feel like they belong.
Yeah, I really like that, Naja. I think listening is really important. I also think allyship is really important. Like if you are in the leadership, if you have a position of power that you can help fostering this environment where people can speak up and can have inclusive opportunities for everyone. I think that's a really important point as well. That can help with companies. Yeah.
Very good. Some really interesting points there. To touch on one of your first ones, Naja. I think 3 very different co-founders is super important, right? So different perspectives. They're not just all thinking the exact same thing and agree on everything, which obviously is really good for some things, but in terms of scaling and actually innovating, it's the worst thing ever, right? You want some debate and some different perspectives. And then you mentioned before about batteries being very new to Norwegians. We need some outside support, and that kind of goes for everyone outside of China, really. So the environment, the inclusivity of a country, for example, needs to be good. So when we invite that talent into a new country or somewhere that's not quite developed yet in that field, they feel welcome. They enjoy it. They can be themselves, and they feel like they belong. And then ultimately they stay, and they add value. So some really good points there. Adri, you've been doing some really good work on the first part of your article, A League of Our Own, a perspective on how to start and keep the flow of women in end-use storage. So really, really good. And we're going to talk a bit about part 2 today. This is, of course, your own project rather than Morrow's project, but of course, Morrow are supporting, which is great. So talk us through part 2 of your article and the plans for your survey.
Yeah. This is coming from long before I joined Morrow, actually. Part 1 was published in 2022, so I was already part of Morrow, but then I started writing it some months before joining. And I talk about it with the people in here, and everyone supports that mindset. So it's really exciting. For the second part, we have been talking with my co-author for the first one about how could we continue this work. The first part was about encouraging women to join the energy storage field and how to promote them and how to retain them. And the second part was like, what should we do to keep the people around? Should we do to include them? And when we were having these conversations, someone who read our first article, she's Marina Navarro, she approached Guiomar Hernandez, the co-author of the first article, and me, and told us that she had read this first article. She thought it was really interesting, and she would like to develop a project with us as well. And we thought that was really exciting that we were reaching some people. And at that moment, she was interested on maternity leave. How does that affect careers? And we thought that was really important, but we also wanted to open it up to leave of absence in general. What happens if you take a leave of absence for any kind of reason, and will that affect your work in in this field, in energy storage field? So that's why we launched a survey. We launched it last month on March 8th, and it's going to be open for 3 months. So it's going to be open until mid-June, more or less. And the idea is that we can collect all these experiences, and we can write that second article and try to analyze what is going on, if it's differs from country to country, how are different people being affected by it. And yeah, that's the plan.
Very good. And yeah, to define leave of absence, I think your first thought was maternity leave, and obviously in turn paternity leave as well. Let's just first of all define categories of like leave of absence. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's basically any leave, any break that you have from work while still working, and it has different reasons. But the most common are parental leave, so maternity and paternity leave, medical and can be both physical or mental leave, bereavement, but also professional development, which is something that we don't talk about that much, that someone can live. And you usually see it in universities where a professor goes for a year to work in a company. And that's also a leave of absence that we don't talk about that much. And that's also why we wanted to include this other kind of leave of absence to see actually which one is the one that people take the most. We assume that it will be parental leave, but maybe we will be surprised by it.
Yeah, that was my first thought as well. And my wife works in HR, international HR, and she was telling me the different policies or trends in each country. In Indonesia, I think men get 2 days paternity leave, and I think women maybe get 2 or 3 months. So I was just, obviously each country is different, right? And that will massively affect not just their lives but their career. So I think in this case, Adri, it's about how much does this affect careers, and in most cases, women take a lot more time off than men do. Not necessarily the case in Scandinavia, which I'm sure we'll get into in this conversation. So in terms of the countries, I guess what you anticipate, talk us through a bit more about that, and I guess maybe a hypothesis of what results you see.
Yeah. So in terms of country, we think it's going to be quite different from country to country. You're talking about Indonesia with the parental leave. And it also depends not only on the time that you could get allowed, but also the money. If I remember correctly, in USA, I think it's unpaid leave, while and it's only a couple of weeks, like 10 to 12 weeks. It's paid leave, but it's just 17 weeks for the woman, not for the man. And in Norway, I think it's up to a year that you can split between man and woman. But yeah, it's between the parents, and it's quite interesting how it's that affecting. But I think it's also affecting why is more socially accepted. Mm-hmm. Like for example, some people in a country, if you take a longer leave of absence, you might come back and find some people that think that you are not qualified to do your job anymore if you took a longer leave of absence. And that, I think it's something that we are trying to catch with this survey. We were gratefully surprised by the answer we have so far right now, because we have got half women and half men who have replied to this survey, so it's quite interesting. And they have really good experiences and that they have shared with us about how they, for example, wanted to take a leave and couldn't do it because they were scared of the stigma around and how they will be perceived by their co-workers or their bosses. So yeah, that's something that we will hope to catch. And also, as we reflect on how is that affecting people and careers, we can try to formulate some ideas on how to overcome those problems.
Very interesting. Just before we move on, for viewers and listeners, we will post the link to your survey or provide access to your survey so they can complete when we do release the podcast. And I was going to ask who can complete the survey. It sounds like anybody can complete it. Is that right?
Yes, we originally wrote it like people working on electrochemical energy storage field, so basically batteries, supercars. And we have also said that it will be ideal if it's people who have taken longer leave than 3 months, because that will be more relevant for your career. But we would also like to hear about people that didn't take the leave of absence, but wanted or needed it, but couldn't do it because of several reasons, like for example, the person I was saying that felt that it will feel stigmatized because of this. So it's open to everyone who has been in that situation of needing a leave of absence.
Right. So the survey is open until mid-June. When do you anticipate publishing the findings?
We are hoping this year. So both Guiomar is an assistant professor in Uppsala. Marina is a researcher in BC Materials in Spain. I work at Morrow, so we all three do it in our free time. So hopefully we will manage to get align our schedules to write this paper before the end of the year.
Right. Yeah, I'm fascinated to hear about the results, and we won't reveal too much information about the results we have so far because we don't want to influence other people's input on the survey. But I wanted to ask a question around, you made a good point on maybe sometimes after a long leave of absence, they might be deemed by colleagues or their manager that they're not qualified to do the job anymore. But then, do you think it also affects hiring decisions? So let's say somebody's interviewing for a position. Do you think that whether you're a man or a woman, do you think that would actually affect like the interviewer's thought process, whether they hire them or not? And just add some context to this question. I was working with an old client. This was maybe 8 years ago. So I was early into my career, young and naive, didn't have the perspective I do now, well, the confidence I do now. And that client, I introduced a candidate to this person. She was a really good candidate in the field. And he came back and asked me the question, Jamie, is she planning on having children anytime soon? I was like, it took me back. I was like, why are you asking me this question? And he said, well, it looks like just from looking at her education background, she might be approaching that age where she's looking to have children. I don't want to pay her a substantial maternity leave, which ultimately went against her candidacy for that position. And I wasn't confident enough to basically push back on that and say, you're absolutely out of order here. This was a long time ago, and it's quite an old school guy. But do you think that still exists in today's world?
I think it still happens, but hopefully we are changing that mentality. I think it affects probably more people in academia, because you have, especially if you have a postdoc contract where you only have 2 years to complete your postdoc, and then the funding is for those 2 years, then people get really worried about, like the example you were saying, the pregnancy. But I think the funding agencies and the companies are noticing more and more that this is not a fair situation. One of the most famous grants that we have for postdocs in Europe is the Marie Skłodowska-Curie scholarship, and that one takes into account that you could have a leave of absence for 18 up to 2 years or 18 months. So I think the mindset is changing. I think it really needs to change, because I think people don't lose their skills just because they didn't work for that long time. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And just to confirm that example of my old client, that is absolutely wrong. So for anyone listening, just to confirm in their minds, that should not happen. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic. So I guess talk to a bit more about your first part of your article. A lack of female applicants is a thing across the globe, and certainly in the battery field. So what are you experiencing at Morrow? Like, are you experiencing the same issue, maybe a lack of female applicants versus male?
So I'm recruiting for the electrolyte separator team at Morrow. And traditionally in batteries, you are focused on the other components. So electrolytes already a small niche. And when I get CVs, I do notice a smaller number of female applicants. But interestingly, when we are moving people to the first interview, we see more or less the same numbers of female and male applicants. And that's usually because if you have 10 requirements, we as women feel that we need to fulfill these 10 requirements, while men are more like, I fulfill most of them or some of them, then I can apply again. So I think that's an interesting point that we don't realize that as much. Also, of course, there are not a lot of women in STEM careers, which is something that we need to work on as well. So we need to promote that more girls go into interested in science since primary school, and then when they grow up and they have to choose a career, they can go on a STEM field as well. I think that's important in any other position as well.
Very good. And I've got some ideas and some solutions and some ideas which I'll go into based on a previous article that I did with a few collaborators. But I asked the question to you two: what do we think is the solution here, or ideas to the solution?
Well, first of all, this is just a numbers game as well, right? You need to have more girls going into these schools, choosing these careers. We need to have more role models and all kinds of positions and roles. And in academia, we need to have more lecturers who are female in R&D and STEM. And then it's about getting, the numbers in when it comes to applications and interviews. But, if you get it right, it becomes an attraction, right? So I feel like, currently at Morrow, we're 40% women, also in kind of engineering, machine operators, and also in R&D. We have so many female leaders in R&D, which I absolutely love. And I think, it's such a win for us, right, to have the likes of Adriana then also is definitely spearheading this topic and being such a advocate for it and signaling very strongly to the job market, what we want to be all about. So, but if other women see, oh, there's a lot of women there, then more women will also want to come, because then they just feel like this is a safe space. I will be comfortable here. Yeah. So it's all about getting the numbers up, and it's a long game, yeah. And at Morrow, at least, we spend a lot of time sending our people out to student fairs, schools, talking, showing off our people that we love to show them off, but really trying to show them off, and having them tell the story about how exciting this type of work can be. So.
Completely agree with that, Naja. And I would like to add a tiny bit. Is also that thanks to the great job that Naja is doing as well. gain the people to know us. That everyone, I think a lot of people know what Morrow Batteries is about now. We are making a good impression on the newspapers and social media as well. So when people join Morrow or apply to be in Morrow, they know that we are a diverse team. And actually all our recruitment process as well is we try to have diversity in the recruitment processes as well. So people will know what kind of people they will be working with.
Amazing. And yeah, good compliments both ways there. You're both obviously two great female leaders in the battery field, and as you say, that mentorship, being that role model. You're inspiring women to maybe join STEM programs, join the business, and as you say, if there's an inclusive environment where it's 40% female, then it's a safe space. If you're only 5% and you're 200 people, it's very difficult to, I guess, feel like you belong, and you're maybe not the kind of same. So it's a tricky situation, but as you say, it's accumulative. So if there's not enough role models, then there's not enough influence of people going into the space. If there is stigmatism around leave of absence, which is putting women at a disadvantage in certain countries to be hired and promoted and invested in as an employee. And then if, as you said before, Adri, a really good point on men overestimating their abilities and women underestimating them. I think that's a huge issue. And yeah, just a really quick tip is putting less criteria in a job description. Because the more criteria you put in, the more likely is that a female applicant will rule herself out, and a guy, as you said, doesn't really care. They think they can do it. So this is, I think, cultural issues over years, which is changing for sure, but it will take some time. So yeah, less criteria.
Yeah, and I think the signal effect of role models is really important. So we just had our chief commercial officer join us in January. She was hired around this time last year when she was, I don't know, 7-8 months pregnant. So these type of things, sometimes it can feel very like, oh, this is symbolic politics type of thing, but these things matter. When you show people that we're willing to wait for great talent, and those we're just kind of have to like try to survive without those months. But so I think being quite again thinking about these things, and then I'm hoping that we can talk more and more about belonging and less about diversity. Because it's not, like you said, with the 5% or the 40%, it's about creating a place where a lot of different people can feel like they can belong, because we're human beings. We want to feel like we're part of a flock, but we don't have to fit in. I don't have to be like you to work with you, and we can be on the same team. So it's really, and then how do you create belonging? And I think it's really, I loved your idea about, cutting down on the list of the checklist on the ads, but also, talking to women and young professionals in the company, like what do you think about this ad? Like, how can we improve this? Like, what would make you want to apply to join this company? Or, what would be our top advice? Like, just ask and listen to what actually people who may have a different profile, what matters to them, and what type of keywords should we use? And yeah, I think that's really important. And then I think, we're a startup, and I think this is so important. Like, we cannot, not aim for perfection. It's all about progress. And I think that's also so important when it comes to diversity or belonging. It's like, just go for it, just start, just try. Be a bit humble about, like, we're not going to be able to nail this at the first try, but let's just start this journey and see where it takes us, and listen and learn as we go. That's better than being paralyzed by trying to make it right from the start.
Yes, strive for progress, not perfection. Just on the whole kind of survey of speaking to women and saying, what do you want to see from a job description? Another tip is gender themed words. So as part of my article, I have a list of gender themed words, male versus female, and obviously having a good balance of the two, or making it more maybe female gender themed. I'll obviously published up this as well. It's a really easy thing just to make the kind of subliminal messages flow through better to women, and encourage them to apply more. Really simple tips. But just go back to something you said then, Naja, about your new CCO joining, 7 months pregnant.
Chief Commercial Officer.
Chief Commercial Officer, which is amazing. And you kind of think, that's amazing. That's really good. If it was a man moving into that role as a CCO, his partner was 7 months pregnant, you'd think, you wouldn't think too much of it. But as a female moving into that role in an organization investing in her, it's a big deal, and we want that to not be a big deal, and it's just that's normal. So yeah, I think that whole kind of equity piece, as we said before, Adri, I guess that applies there. So good to hear. To kind of close off this conversation, and I think you mentioned this before, Naja, to create DEI harmony, do you think it's more important to focus on your recruitment strategy or your internal culture? Or in this case, belonging, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's they're both really important. So what you have to do is to create, your end goal is to create a successful team, right? So now when I go to interviews, for example, and trying to evaluate how technically strong this person will be, but also trying to think how this person will fit into the team. How will we make it work together? How can I make life easier for this person? So I think creating a good team when you are looking for people, but then it never stops. You always have to keep creating a processes that benefits everyone, and as Naja said, that helps with the belonging in the team. And circumstances sometimes change, and then you have to be agile enough to change how you are approaching certain situations and how you are building your team. So I do think both of them are equally important long term.
Right. And I was going to ask, where should a company start if they're about to embark on the DEI journey? You answered that question before, Naja. Just start. Don't overthink it. Strive for progress, and speak to the team, and don't hesitate. Go for it. Cool. So to finish off, this has been a really good conversation. Thank you both very much. We will of course share your survey and the first part of your article as well for anybody interested in these topics, which I'm sure they will. So as a closing tradition, and we'll make this DEI specific, how do you think the battery and electrification world will look in 10 years' time from a DEI perspective?
Maybe I can start with that one. So my two favorite things about working at Morrow, one is that I'm working on really exciting scientific challenges. So that as a chemist, as a battery scientist, is really fun. But the second part is that we have really good EDI foundations in here. As Naja was saying, we started from a diverse team already. We have been not that long in the game, and we have almost 200 employees, but we have 40% women, 31 nationalities. That's telling me that we started with the right foot already, and that's a huge advantage, I think. So what I'm hoping is that all the startups and scale-ups are working on right now, are starting with the same foot on the right path, or at least trying to. So I'm hoping that in 10 years, the battery and electrification world will be a more inclusive place where we are like a standard for other companies, really all companies that could learn from us.
Amazing.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to add to that. I think it's we have so much to offer talented STEM talents, because they want to be a part of the solution, and how what type of problems do you want to solve in the world. And I think batteries is such a big part of electrifying society going forward. So I'm very optimistic. I think we're not gonna have trouble attracting top female and other type of talents. So yeah, optimistic for the future.
Great. Well, you're both doing incredibly inspiring work, so thank you very much to you two for making amazing contributions to this space. It's a it's an industry for the future, so therefore the workforce, the people in it, need to be diverse. We need to be coming in with different perspectives. With different perspectives comes more innovation. With more innovation becomes hopefully a sustainable planet. So this is why DEI should be at the root of every startup in this space, and in your case, scale up. So yeah, good luck with all the work that you're doing, Adri. Good luck with getting the survey completed and put together. I look forward to hearing the results.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
And thank you for
Thank you
inviting
for
us.
having us.
Our pleasure. Thank you for taking charge.